everybody. Um, and Happy New Year. Please mute your devices if you are participating in this meeting so we can begin. Thank you all for being here, those who are here in chamber and those who are watching us virtually. Uh, as you all know, the City of Fort Lauderdale will continue to host its meetings in both a virtual and an in-person format. The public will be able to listen to and view commission meetings at www.fortlauderdale.gov/FLTV. Also on youtube.com /City of Fort Lauderdale, as well as on channel 78 and AT&T Uverse channel 99. So if you would wish to speak on an agenda item, please click on the link below. And that link is bit.ly/virtual CC meetings. To help ensure the decorum, we ask that you please abide by the following guidelines. Please refrain from any behavior that is disruptive, distractive, profane, or inhibits the meeting in any way. 2, while you're on the phone waiting for your opportunity to speak, please mute the meeting broadcast on whichever broadcast you're watching, and to avoid delays. I will call upon you when it is your turn to speak and also notify you when your time has expired. City staff has automatically added speakers to the listen only mode, so you will be unmuted to speak when recognized. Finally, once you have completed speaking, you will be muted and you may either hang up and exit the meeting or stay on and listen to the balance of the meeting. So I hope everyone feels energized and exciting in this new 2021 era. Let's hope that we can put 2020 behind us and we've learned lessons on how to move forward in this COVID environment, and some exciting things are going to be happening in our community in the next few weeks. So hopefully we'll be able to certainly turn the corner and bring our community back to what it once was. So anyway, so today we have a pretty short agenda, but I'm sure there's a lot to talk about. We've been away over the holidays. Hope everyone had a healthy and exciting holiday season. And so let us begin by talking about the City Commission reports. We'll begin with District 1.
District 1, thank you, Mayor. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Welcome back. I'm very thankful all my commissioners are healthy and here. That was the good news of today. So once again, 2021, here we go. A lot on our mind. I wanted to start out by remembering P.O. Iracy. He did have his funeral last week, and Vice Mayor and I attended on your behalf, Mayor, and issued the expression of sympathy. And P.O. was a 30-year president of the Galt Mile Association. Probably, maybe Betty Shelley may be about equal in that, but I don't know any other residents who have been involved so faithfully and so long in our city, and so he will be missed. He was the mayor of the Galt. I don't want to usurp you, but I listened to Pio's advice because he was knowledgeable, and he will be missed, and I will miss him a lot. So just wanted to take time to mention him. It's hard to move on after that, but I want to congratulate a few of our football teams in the city of Fort Lauderdale. I'll just start with my district, and maybe I'll leave that for Commissioner McKenzie to congratulate his team. But Cardinal Gibbons was the 2020 Class 4A state champions. So for their football season this year, and we will recognize Cardinal Gibbons, I believe, at our next meeting in January. Is that accurate, Chris? Yeah. Sorry, too thirsty.
Yeah, we're working on finalizing the date now, and we're just the other school in District 3, just waiting to hear how they want to be recognized. Then we'll put it together.
Okay, super. So maybe we'll recognize them all. It'll be a little different. I know we had them in person last year when they also won, but looking forward to recognizing them. Let's see. I know we're going to talk a lot more about vaccines later, probably, right? Maybe in the city manager's report and other things. I know it's really the most important issue on my mind right now, and it's complicated, and we don't have a lot of control, but I know we're doing our best as a city to be a partner in solutions. So we'll hear more from Chris later about that. So, okay, let's see. Thursday, I'm going to attend the Broward League of Cities meeting, and I'm going to present our no smoking on the beach resolution, and hopefully we'll get the support from the rest of the Broward League of Cities, the other cities in our county to support us, and then we can take that to Florida League of Cities, and hopefully we can really make a change this year and get that legislation passed this session. So I'll let you know. Also, Mayor Geller attended our last meeting, and he said that they have a new program, the Broward Medal of Valor Award. And so we can submit for any people in our city, really first responders or people who have risked their lives going above and beyond to help others. He's asking that we submit these recommendations to his office. So anyone we know, I'm sure our first responders would make the top of the list. But we may also have some people we want to recognize in our city who have gone above the call of duty during this pandemic. So any commissioner or staff member can submit those.
It's a Medal of Valor.
Geller. Yes, the Broward Medal of Valor Award related to the pandemic. So he has started that and he's seeking input. I think that's it from me. I've enjoyed meeting with a lot of different groups the past few weeks virtually, a lot of virtual mingle jingles. That was new. I look forward to our normal parties next year. That'll be nice seeing people in person again. I did speak at the Uptown Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber meeting, let them know about everything that's going on in Uptown, and we're voting tonight on a project too that's happening up there. And we've been busy down in the North Beach shops and restaurants. The construction is almost completed on the 2 streets down there, and the landscaping has gone in. Of course, young landscaping looks different than mature landscaping. So we did have to meet with neighbors, and I believe the ultimate plan when everything is mature will be lovely. And then we're going to continue to meet and create ambience with some lighting like you would see on Himmershey down there. So the project's going well, and we met with neighbors last week about that. So thank you. I'll turn it over.
Thank you. I know the folks that have restaurants and stores there have certainly gone through a lot, and we appreciate their patience. I know as a result of the construction and the virus, some businesses actually went out of business, not to return, but it's a terrible thing when that happens. Hopefully, those spaces will be occupied by new businesses, because I think the environment is now much more inviting and friendly, and hopefully we can revive the retail and restaurant establishment in that area. Vice Mayor, good to have you back.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you. It's been a busy couple of weeks. And as Commissioner Moritas stated, yes, we did attend Pio's service and celebration of life, and just so sad, really. And I just was so shocked with that news. I actually had met Pio when I was serving as president of the Central Beach Alliance, and we used to confer on a lot of mutual Barrier Island issues. And, I just always found him so knowledgeable and so able to get things done, not just locally, but also on the state level. And that's a very big loss for our community. And my heartfelt sympathy to his entire family. I wanted to mention that we also lost 2 very interesting folks that go way back in our city's history as well. Prior to Pio's passing, Robert Dwight Johnson was also known as Skip Johnson. He passed away towards the end of December. He was a native of Fort Lauderdale and actually from 2 early pioneer families. He began his career on Fort Lauderdale Beach Patrol, then became the director of all of our pools and beaches, including the old casino pool up by Las Olas and A1A. From then, he actually became an assistant city manager in Fort Lauderdale, followed by being the city manager of Oakland Park and Hallandale. So that's a loss for the community as well, from someone that went way back and did a lot of early contribution to our city. Also, former Florida State Senator Tom McPherson passed away in December of 2020. And he did a lot for our area. In fact, mostly I would say he was probably the person who helped establish the countywide library system in the 1970s, secured funding to expand that system, including the development of the main library downtown. He was very focused on New River projects and did a lot of funding, very responsible for major funding for the Broward Center of the Performing Arts, and also worked with the Florida Trust and the Bonnet House. So he just did a tremendous amount on a local level, and I'm sure that that is the loss for the community. So sympathies to his family as well. So again, Thomas Allen McPherson, maybe we can remember him, and Skip Johnson along with Pio this evening in a memory, in a moment of silence. Going back to our last meeting since then, we did have a Los Olos Mobility Working Group meeting, and we will be doing that again in January. The Poinsettia Heights Civic Association meeting also on December 16th. I attended on the 17th, the Bonnet House Board of Directors meeting. I listened on December 21 to the Historic Preservation Board meeting. I was very interested in the next round of staff work on the Historic Preservation Ordinance. They're doing excellent work and some more excellent recommendations that they're putting together and coming forward with. So I look forward to when we have that discussion at the commission level. Hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas on the 25th, obviously. And I enjoyed watching the downtown countdown on December 31st. I almost felt like I was there at the anchor drop. It was great. I think city staff did a great job putting that together. So I did actually get a chance to watch that as well. I actually attended a celebration of life for Bill Smart. For those of you that don't know, Bill Smart and Diane Smart have been so active in our community for many years, mostly in the historic preservation realm. Bill was 94 years old, and he was an amazing man. He was truly a Renaissance man. He was so knowledgeable, came up with amazing ideas all the time. I always enjoyed my conversations with him, and I was very saddened to learn of his passing in December. A wonderful gentleman, or true, when I think of the word gentleman, someone like Bill Smart just comes to mind. So my heart goes out to his wife, Diane. That's a terrible loss for her. Tomorrow night, the Victoria Park Civic Association meeting will get together. On Tuesday the 12th, I'll attend the International Swimming Hall of Fame board meeting. And also Los Olos Mobility Working Group will come together again on the 14th. Of course, we have the holiday on the 18th, Martin Luther King celebration. Just a couple of comments I would like to make. And maybe you can help me with this, Chris. I'm starting to hear more about people that are concerned about the redundant pipeline. They'd like a little bit more of the specifics in terms of the update. And a lot of neighborhoods that were told that they would be repaving and repair would happen after their piece was completed. They're still sort of waiting for that, especially groups like the Victoria Park, Ellington Townhomes, and others. Are we going to be able to let people know when they can expect, a total restoration in their area after the work is completed?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, we can, excuse me, we can put something together that would show the different segments, when they're anticipated to be done, and when then the eventual repair is to be made. Victoria Park, for example, there's multiple projects going on in that neighborhood. There's a sewer project, a water main project. And if the roads have not been repaved, it's because there's still yet something to come underneath those roads. So we want to make sure that we dig them up and only have to repave them at the very end. So I drive through that neighborhood every day. I'm very mindful of it, but there's multiple projects going on in that neighborhood. And when they do come to a close, we will do the repair work that we said that we would do.
That'd be great, because I think people would just like to know when they can figure on some of that, final steps happening, and that would be really helpful, especially because I really enjoyed reading the 2020 progress report. Chris, thank you for that. So that's why people, I think, would just like to know what is to come. With regards to the Parks Bond, Chris, are we going to actually get a breakdown of projects as they're starting to come online and what the budgets are for each one, and sort of seeing where we stand as we move forward through that process?
I think the answer to that is yes, but I also think that I recall that there was going to be a bond implementation web space to go to. Let me go to Phil Thornburg here real quick, who's managing
Okay.
that with AECom, and we'll talk about public notification, public progress.
Thank
I do have that as well. Let's see.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor.
Hi,
The,
Phil.
we are moving forward. The public outreach will start February the 1st. So all of February, we'll be doing the public outreach virtually. They've been working on that pretty hard for the last couple of months. We've had to take everything virtually for that. But so you'll start to see around town probably in the next couple of weeks, some banners, things going out on social media, all that on how to give their input on what we plan to do. As you know, there's this list that's been around for a few years. So that's kind of our starting point. So, and there's a budget for that. So that will all be uploaded and is in the process of being uploaded now on the Park Bond website. So to answer your question, yes, it's still kind of a work in progress to get everything uploaded. But in the next month, you'll start to see everything uploaded with budgets. You'll also see every park with the, I guess the initial recommendations for development and then individuals can make comments on those and can make comments in general in the Parks Bond.
Okay, great. Excellent. I think that'll be great just as a sort of as we go through the process and approve projects and just see how each one's doing in terms of budget. That'll be really helpful. Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Chris, in Sailboat Bend, for so many years now, the historic Westside Grade School has sat dormant on a huge, big, beautiful piece of land. I was wondering if there's any way that we can connect somehow with the county. There were many unanswered questions way back when that project was finished. At one time, there was even lush landscaping around the historic Westside Grade School, which was eventually used by the Broward County Historical Commission. And then next door, the Sailboat Bend Artist Lofts were built and occupied, but it's just been sitting vacant for so long. Part of the agreement when that school was refurbished was that the neighborhood would have meeting space. And there was actually an annex created on the back, like a little T-shape off of the main building. So they lost all of that space in terms of meetings and gathering. But can we just find out what the county is doing with that site? And, you know, I know there was some lawsuits, there was some construction defects. I know sprinklers never worked, lights never worked. The site was once very beautiful and then it was just let to really, really fall apart. It would be very helpful if we can find out what the plan is, what's going on. Is it going to be occupied again? Are they going to keep it up? Are they at least going to create landscaping again? Will the neighborhood have the chance to fulfill their portion of the lease where they're able to use the meeting space? Can we just find out the answers to what's going on there?
I can. I do not have answers today, but I can.
That'd be great, because that would be very helpful to that neighborhood. Again, a beautiful building that's just unfortunately just sitting there in disrepair. I believe it's actually on the National Register of Historic Places. I do know that it's also locally designated, and it is one of our original elementary schools in the city of Fort Lauderdale. Thank you. Starting to hear again a little bit of an uproar about motorcycles again on the beach and on Las Olas. I don't know what we can do to monitor that. Excuse me, Mayor?
An uproar.
An uproar over motorcycles again. It was quiet for a while. Didn't hear a lot about motorcycles, but that's changing again. And people are starting to be upset with wheelies and speeding. And the last two Sundays up and down A1A and Las Olas, often on Broward Boulevard sometimes as well, according to some folks in Sailboat Bend. Maybe if we can start to get a handle on that and in terms of enforcement, that would be great, Chris. Las Olas, I know that from the working group, the idea of crosswalks has been coming up a lot, and a lot of the residents don't want to wait till we actually do whatever it is we're going to do with that plan. There was another bike accident in the last 2 weeks. So I don't know, Chris, if there's any way we can look into maybe talking and dealing with TAM and speeding up at least the crosswalk portion of that, where we know that we need it. But that is becoming ever more a concern on that project. We know that there's still some Sailboat Bend code issues, but my office has been following up with Portia. That came out of some comments last night from the pre-agenda meeting from Sailboat Bend. Other than that, I think I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to follow up on a couple of topics that you brought up. With regard to the Las Olas Working Group, when are we going to see some closure to that process? And do we have a milestone that we've achieved up to this point to at least present to the commission something for discussion? This has been going on.
Yes, the commission's actually gonna see our plan is to have a few more meetings in January and February. And the second meeting in February, just next month, in a few weeks, Corradino has been charged with bringing to the commission the consensus of the working group for the 2.5-mile stretch of Las Olas. That plan's coming to us the second meeting in February.
Okay, great. Thank you. With regard to the sewer, the process seems to be stuck at 18th Street and 15th Avenue. Is there anyone on staff that can give us a little bit of an update of what's going on there? It's been blocked for almost 2 months, and I think the community wants to know, like, when is it going to be finished?
Let me look and see who we have. The best one for that would be Omar with our Public Works group. I don't see him in the room. So why don't we'll find Omar, Mayor, and when we can get him, we'll have him update you on that.
Okay, that would be great. Also, with regard to motorcycles, this has become a chronic problem in a lot of cities, but Fort Lauderdale in particular, there seems to be a culture that is continuing to grow that thinks that the roads within our city are playgrounds for motorcycles, and people speeding, removing their muffler devices on their exhausts, creating a tremendous amount of noise. This is especially true now on Federal Highway south of Oakland Park Boulevard, as well as on A1A, and in particular coming across the Sunrise Bridge onto the intercoastal, from the intercoastal to the beach, has become a place where motorcyclists just continue to think that it's a joyride, and it's causing a tremendous amount of noise, safety issues, other people that are trying to drive on those roads, walk on those roads. It's scary. It's very scary. And, I've been talking about this since 2003, when I first became a commissioner, and we don't seem to have an appetite for trying to put a stop to this. And it's only given the message to some people in the biker community that it's okay to run rampant on our streets. I hear it from my house. I hear it. It's just, and constituents throughout the community continue to complain about the incessant recklessness of many people who ride motorcycles. Not everybody, but there's enough that make it very uncomfortable to drive on our streets. I think at some point we need to have an honest discussion about enforcement here, because I don't think we really focused on that. But honestly, we really need to do something about it. It's getting out of hand, and this is not a place where we want to encourage people to operate their motorcycles in I feel, a very reckless and irresponsible way. So I hope at some point we can have this as a discussion in our conference meeting to discuss what kind of enforcement measures we want to implement.
Mayor, so just so I'm clear, I share your concern. Are you asking about enforcement options for reckless driving and or noise?
Both.
Okay, so I'd like to hear just so reckless driving, I'm more clear as to what the enforcement options are, but I'd love to hear what tools we have for both of those, just even if briefly, Chris.
Yeah, so it becomes a function of volume versus volume of our ability to enforce. And let me turn it over to Chief Dietrich, and we'll let her respond on behalf of the police department.
Yeah, the motorcycles have definitely been a problem. We've gotten some pretty good videos from people, and we've sent some action plans on it. The problem is they're coming from Miami and they're coming from all over the county, and they'll form up in certain spots, and we have to try to figure out where are they? Are they in Lauderdale today? Are they up on Sunrise? And we try to figure out where they're going to be. It's manpower intensive. We put together a whole action plan. We did 3 action plans on it since I want to say middle of November. The first time we put a bunch of guys on it, they formed up in Lauderhill and they never came into the city of Fort Lauderdale. So that was like a wasted night for us. They went to other cities. Then the second time they did come into Fort Lauderdale, and we ended up writing over 50 tickets and towing motorcycles. The third time, as they started to come towards the beach from Sunrise, they saw our motor officers up on the bridge and they made a U-turn and boogied and they went out of the city. So the message is getting there that we're there and we're going to start hitting them as hard as we can, but we never know where they're going to go. So sometimes they come here, sometimes they don't. Like I said, it's manpower intensive. It's also difficult because they're on the bikes and they can run. And the last thing we want to do is be chasing motorcycles down the beach. We've tried to get the bridge tenders to go ahead and put the bridges up when we want to try to corral them. And those are under the Coast Guard, and they will not do that for us. So that's kind of something that we tried to work with doing. But it's a matter of getting them to realize when you come into Fort Lauderdale, it's going to be very painful monetarily for you if you're going to, go ahead and rock our streets the way they've been doing it. Because I tell you, the videos I saw were crazy. And I agree with you 100%, but it is manpower intensive and we are doing action plans on it. And I try to send Vice Mayor Glassman the stats anytime that we do it. And as for the loud mufflers, that's been a problem for 30 years that I've been here. And there are citations that we can issue for that, but it's, again, kind of got to be there, hear it, stop them. So it makes it a little more difficult as well. But we are hitting them with different action plans. It's just a matter of how many we can get on that day and if they come into the city.
Well, Chief, I know that with regard to speeding, we set up certain areas with radar guns and so forth, and we seem fully prepared to be able to cite people who are speeding in motor vehicles. So knowing that there are certain hotspots in our city, like the Sunrise Bridge and like A1A, can't we set up similar stations through the course of a day to, and I could tell you on a typical weekend, Saturday or Sunday, there's multiple incidents where singular or single individuals, will just race their bikes across the bridge. And it's fun. I could see it, it looks like a big thrill, coming down the bridge and whizzing past cars and it's just, but it's a nightmare for those that are walking and those that are also on the road to have to deal with that because it's a threatening environment. And if we can set up, radar stations for speeding, I would think that there could be a possibility that we could do the same thing for trying to enforce the kind of motorcycle behavior that we're trying to prohibit.
Yeah, and we can do that. We take in all the traffic complaints and we divvy those up amongst the motormen, and they're trying to service the whole city. And everybody's trying to pull for the resources, and there's a limited amount of resources. When we do get those, like Las Olas was one of the areas, and we ran a 3-week action plan up there because the speeding on Las Olas was crazy. And we wrote over 400 citations in 3 weeks. So, we know there's problems, but it's, okay, now we got to take the resources and move them here and move them there because everybody wants those resources. But yeah, we can definitely set up that action plan up on Sunrise or Las Olas. We're getting different people calling and saying it's at different locations. It's not a problem. It's just putting the manpower, taking them from one place and putting them in another place is all it is.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate
it. Mayor, may I?
Yes, sir.
But I don't just think it's the Barrier Island or Las Olas. I think even the chief alluded to it. They come from Lauderdale or And really, Sunrise and 31st is where most of the time it forms, right by the service station and the swap shop area. Because they have access from 95, they all gather from various counties, and then they figure out a route to get to the barrier island. I know when they do the wheels up, guns down deal, they come from all over the United States, particularly the northeastern part of the states, and between Florida Highway Patrol, BSO, our officers, they typically shut down the exits from the interstates, which won't allow them to get to that artery of Sunrise Boulevard and make their way either to Los Olas or over the bridge at Sunrise. So we have to catch them before they get that far in to be able to make an impact. Am I correct, Chief?
Partially, yes. There's no way to be able to really shut down the interstate and not let them off, because then you're shutting down everybody, and you're handpicking.
No, but I've seen it when it's guns up. I mean, wheels up, guns down. They have every exit on 95 manned by police officers, and they avoid those exits because they see the manpower there. So it stops them from entering into the city on that particular day. So
Yeah.
I think that does work. Maybe it has to be, and you typically see it on Saturdays and Sundays. It is when it really gets cranked up with those individuals that are riding the crotch rockets and things of that nature. I mean, but on any given day, you'll see a Harley Davidson going down the beach, and they're loud just by their existence. I mean, I never heard a quiet Harley Davidson. So, but to address this particular crowd, I think we got to do it further west to stop them from coming that far into the city.
And we could do that.
All right. Thank you.
Chief, question for you.
Yes.
Educate me a little bit on the muffler noise limitations. What are we able to ticket for? Is there a decibel level, or how do you?
There, and I don't want to speak out of turn because laws change every year. But when I was on motors, it was a decibel level. And the motorman would definitely know what it is that they can ticket for and how they can ticket it. So I would put that in their hands, but it was always usually a decibel level.
And we've written tickets recently for noise infractions.
I'm sure we have. What we have done, I don't know right offhand, but we can pull that out of our records database and see if those have been written, and we can, like I said, make the action plan and put them on it. Just
great. Yeah, that'd be great. And if you're able, Chief, just like a little summary, and it sounds like you're already doing that, but if you can just share that with each of us, I think that'd be great.
And what's your parameters? Where do you want that at? Because I know we're getting complaints on Los Olas, and I think Sunrise. Is there another place?
And sometimes I think 17th Street Causeway.
17th a little bit, and then North Federal. I live blocks off of North Federal and hear it a
Chief,
lot.
I'm also getting complaints from Selbo Bend neighborhood around Broward Boulevard as well, and A1A obviously.
Yeah, A1A has always been a problem, especially south of Oakland.
Right.
And again, they're coming from the Broward, Sunrise exits, depending on what they've scoped out in terms of a navigable course where there's no police visibility.
Right.
And then they hit the hot spots like we're all talking about, but they start again in the West. And I know I've been complaining since arriving to Mayor, and because they just wreak havoc before they get, east and do more harm. So somehow or another, we got to stop them from just coming into the city, period.
So I
Leave
know
that up to the chief to figure out how to stem the flow into the city. But I think your point is very well taken.
I understand, and we'll put something on it, and then we'll send you out a summary.
Okay, great.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Okay, and back to leaf blowers. Where are we on that, Mr. Boileau?
That is back pretty much in your hands. You all were deciding whether to do a full ban or whether you were going to use some or have a limitation on the use.
So why don't we set this up as an agenda item at our next conference meeting, and we can have that open discussion and let the public weigh in on it? Does that sound, I know Commissioner Sorensen, you were interested in that as well. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. Okay, sorry, Commissioner McKenzie, I didn't mean to cut in there, but I just wanted to follow up with some of the topics that the Vice Mayor brought up. So please go ahead.
That was a good cut in, no problem. Again, hope you all had a wonderful holiday or holidays. I don't really have a commissioner report, but I do have some. I want to echo Commissioner Moritas with these teams that have repeated state championships. Cardinal Gibbons, Dillard High School, and St. Thomas Aquinas. I have reached out to the coaches in my district to figure out what's best for them for the presentation. So by the time we get everything together, we'll be able to do something for all of those schools. So again, congratulations to those state champions under such strenuous conditions, and with COVID and all. I mean, it's been very, 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 very difficult, but they were able to persevere and bring home those state titles to Fort Lauderdale. Chris and Raj, I know we've been talking about this, and I brought it up in the last conference meeting. And it's not just my district, so I don't just watch my district, but since the flooding, no matter what artery I go down, it could be Broward, Sunrise, Sistrunk, Federal Highway. You can go to Victoria Park, but I noticed where the sewer trunk lines are, and typically where the manhole covers or the smaller covers sit, they all had an indentation, or they sunk or sank during the flooding. We went out and repaired them. And now everywhere there's a repair, you also see painting. So obviously staff is monitoring, but my question is, was that flooding, or is something going on with the sewer? Because you see it up and down 23rd from Sunrise all the way to Oakland Park, by Oswald Park. And when your tires hit them, it's a big shock to your vehicle. What is causing that? Were you guys able to get an answer on that?
So I've got Raj coming to the podium. Yes, there is some undermining going on at those manhole boxes, but I'm not the engineer. Let me turn it over to the engineer to answer the how and the why.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the commission. You are right, Commissioner McKenzie. We have this type of problems throughout the city, and it is going to be my goal for the next several months to be able to start the inspection program. There is a lot of settlement that is going on around these structures, and once the water gets in there, then it is just a cascading effect. So we are going to be working on this expeditiously. I've been coordinating with the county and the state also, because I have observed the similar problems. So yes, it is in the works, and we are going to start investigating a little bit more aggressively than what we have done in the past.
Okay. And basically that completes my report. I just wanted to bring that to everyone else's attention. I don't know if you've seen it, but I just noticed that these holes are everywhere.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Yeah, happy New Year to all, and glad, Vice Mayor, you're doing well, buddy. Several topics I just want to touch on. Just excited first about the federal courthouse. GSA closed on the property on 3rd and 11th, and that is amazing. And so continue to make great progress. And the mayor and others have been working long and hard on this. So it's exciting to secure a spot for the future federal courthouse. So that's great. Another project that I think is real exciting, and Chris, maybe you can just give us a brief update, is the Broadview, when we're looking at affordable housing possible project there. Can you just give us a quick update what that is, where it stands?
We are, yes, we're in discussions with the Housing Authority, with TAM and represented by Mr. Lockery on what is possible there. I think that, as I've suggested to you, I think that is the right group to be working with at this point. There are some limitations on the site because there is some areas that do need to be maintained for future water wells. But we're working on that and working on which of the parcels near Broadview. I think there's a total of 5. I think a total of 4 might have interest in being developed with an affordable project. So well underway, dusted it off right before the holidays, and we'll bring you back updates as we bring that to a conclusion and a recommendation.
Great, thanks. And while you're at it, just again, just because it's such an important project, where we stand for looking at 5 Ash, replacing it.
Yeah, so we've gone to the market for the owner's rep that we've consistently talked about. Our Public Works Department has put together a timeline of what it looks like to navigate through that. Also, still in review of any proposals that we might receive before then. And so, really, there's 2 parallel paths there. Both are still moving forward. I had a meeting last week and had another unsolicited proposal dropped off to us. I plan on taking a look more further at it after we get through tonight's commission meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Alan, Chris, can you, following our discussion, vote on Riverwalk Garage? Are you able to give us just an update in terms of what might be next, Riverwalk Center, what we can consider, where we stand with that?
I'll start and then I'll turn it over to the city attorney. I really think, based upon your action of the last meeting, we're probably starting over if we were to choose to go to development community for a development partner. That is one option. To do the repair work is another option that we could bear, or we could do a different type of project there that would include the maintenance of the garage itself. I believe, without putting words in his mouth, you're going to hear that even if we were to try to bring some life back to the 3 proposals that we got, that what was proposed based upon the commission's comments at the last meeting is so substantially different that we would likely trigger us starting the process over again. Mr. City Attorney.
From the legal standpoint, or procedural, I should say, probably the preferable form to follow would be a resolution rescinding the selection and formally ceasing the negotiations for the lease. That would sort of cut the chain there, and at that point, then you'd be free to resolicit or reformulate what may be envisioned for that site.
Great. So, if I'm hearing you right, really the only option moving forward is just to finish this near termination that's already happened and then begin anew. Is what I'm hearing.
That's correct, because based, again, as the city manager alluded to, based on the comments and discussions by the city commission, what has been proposed thus far is rather distant than what the visions may be of the commission. So it would be better to just repackage that and determine what we want and put it out back in the market.
Great. And Chris, remind me of the dollar amount needed. I mean, just from a kind of maintenance and investment standpoint, just to kind of keep it going, where are we at a dollar amount that would be needed for that garage?
Oh, it's several $1 million. I think we're in the neighborhood of 11 to 12.
Okay. And that's,
I'm sure I get a nod from Ben on that answer. Just yes, I'm getting the nod. So that is the correct answer.
Okay.
My final answer.
So Mayor, I think ideally we look for some type of a public-private partnership for this, but I think we should, and I'll take the blame for it. We should do a better job of just kind of being clear around what we would like there and what makes sense to us, and then kind of have that discussion as a commission, I think, Mayor.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And should we put it down on an agenda item?
Yeah, could we?
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Chris,
Yep, noted.
and then in advance of that, Chris and Alan, do we need to bring for a vote the final step with that?
They can be concurrent, but I mean, we'll bring it for you the next meeting just to make it clean. But it doesn't preclude, one does not preclude the other. So.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Thank you. Let me see here. Let's have one other item. COVID, and I several components about COVID I'd like to talk about, but Mayor, we can do that whenever Chris wants to have that discussion this afternoon.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I just have a couple of things. I just want to announce that on January 11th, a new restaurant will be opening in Fort Lauderdale called Salt 7. That's at the Icon. I believe this is on the intercoastal side of the building, and I think all the permitting issues have been resolved, and there'll be a ribbon cutting at 5 p.m. that day. So I invite everybody to attend, and there will, on the next day, January 12th, we'll be congratulating the new leadership of Fort Lauderdale Forum. That'll be at a Zoom meeting at noon that day. If you'd love to participate, that would be great. And we'll also be celebrating on January 18th, Martin Luther King Day. I guess we're not having a parade this year, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I hope the community will find alternative ways in which to celebrate the life and legacy of this important individual in our history. And I regret that we're not able to do a parade this year, but certainly our hearts are there in continuing his memory. And then on January 20th, there will be a grand opening of 613 at 6 p.m. I'm not going to be in town that day. So Vice Mayor, I believe that's in your district, correct? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes.
It is.
I don't know if it's, I haven't seen that on my calendar, but I'll check.
Okay. So if you could verify that, it'd be great if you could attend that. I know that was a project a long time coming. It's a beautiful, beautiful building, and I understand it's very successful, and certainly it's a great addition to that corridor as we move forward in trying to rehabilitate the Sistrunk area. Let's see. So I think the real big issue, the real big news is talking about COVID vaccinations and COVID testing. So in that regard, I'm going to pass turn the floor over to Chris. But before I do that, I just want to thank everybody for being safe and responsible these past couple of weeks. I know there were tremendous temptations around the city and around the country to participate in group settings to celebrate the holidays as we have all these years. But, and I know there were a few places that could have been more responsible, shall I say. I hope they don't serve as an example of what we're going to follow in the weeks ahead. We really need to keep our social distancing and wear our masks, because we certainly do not want to repeat 2020 in 2021. But the experts are now saying that whatever number of infections that we've had to date is going to double by the end of spring. So we really need to be very careful about how we interact with each other. And we're not kidding, and it's not like, we're doing it for our own health. We're doing it for your health. And when I see bars that are packed to the gills and restaurants that are just not responsible, where even some of the service staff are not wearing masks, it's completely wrong. And our code enforcement people will continue to enforce our laws and those of the county to ensure compliance. Until this vaccine is disseminated throughout the community, we cannot take any chances. People are thinking that, it's done now, that there's nothing to worry about. We're going to get a vaccine. Well, the vaccine is not coming quickly. It's not coming fast enough. There aren't enough people taking it. And this is no panacea. We do not want to see hundreds and hundreds of more deaths in our community. And that's exactly what we're looking at if we do not prepare ourselves and keep ourselves safe. So anyway, having said that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Chris. And Chris, why don't you give us an update on what's been going on?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Why don't I take it in two different categories, and we'll see if that addresses at least where we are. So the two categories would be testing and vaccination. So up until just earlier last week, we had two testing sites, one at Holiday Park and one at Mills Pond Park. There were two different tests that were offered at Holiday Park and one test that was offered at Mills Pond Park. Those sites were both being run by the Department of Health in Broward County. The holiday testing site is officially closed. It is converting to a vaccination site. All of the testing in Fort Lauderdale will then be moved over to Mills Pond Park, and there's only one test that's going to be offered. The state is no longer doing the rapid test. They're only doing the PCR test.
So are we going to have an official opening on Thursday then?
We will have an official opening of the vaccination site, but let me highlight how it's going to open here real quick, and maybe it'll make some sense. For the first 3 days that site is open, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday this week, the Department of Health in Broward will be moving people that they have scheduled for website now, browardcovidvaccine.com. That is the one way to schedule an appointment or reservation at Holiday Park moving forward. Appointments will be available for members of the public 65 years of age and older by registering at that website. That is the one single point that you can go to get that.
And those vaccinations will begin for the general public on January 12th. Is that correct?
Correct. Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I anticipate, although your guess is as good as mine, and I have to check as well, that website for scheduling for the appointments will be up hopefully soon. Right now, it was hit with a lot of volume right off the bat, and it just wasn't able to stay active. Many people were able to get appointments, and right now the state has it in a position that it's just not accepting future appointments because all those appointments that they had available were full. When it comes back live, whether that's later today, whether that's tomorrow, Holiday Park will be offered as an option for people to schedule for appointments. So again, next Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning is the first time that the member of the public can go to be vaccinated. If they see the park open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, it is going to be open. Just know that those are medical first responders that are being vaccinated for those first 3 days.
Okay.
We had a good partnership with American Medical Response Ambulance. We use them to do testing. They're going to be the trained medical staff that will be administering the vaccine at Holiday Park. We've had great partners with Pompano Beach, Wilton Manors, and Oakland Park in doing some staffing of the waiting area. When you receive the vaccine, you have to stay and be observed on the site for either 15 or 30 minutes, depending on underlying conditions. And between the four cities, we have put together a plan that will allow us to put transport rescue units in that waiting area in case anybody experiences a medical issue as a response to the vaccine, so that we'll be able to deal with it quickly. There is no exact time as to how long the site is going to be open. We don't know if it's a couple months up to whenever we either have people that stop needing the vaccine or we've officially turned the corner, but I would expect that we would be doing vaccinations there for months. I will touch on as well that, as you know, Mayor, we received a phone call from the state expressing some interest in a state-run vaccination site in the city of Fort Lauderdale. We spent this morning.
Well, they're all state-run. They're all state-run, right?
Well, whether or not it's run by emergency management or run by DOH. And DOH, correct. Yes, DOH is a Florida organization.
Think like it's being run by the city or being run by the county.
Correct.
It's being run. All these vaccination sites are being run by the state.
Correct. Just different versions of the state. So the one we have is Department of Health in Broward, but we were contacted by the state's emergency management group, which is a state level agency, to say we're doing testing sites as well. Not testing sites, sorry, vaccination sites. We'd like to explore one in Fort Lauderdale. It's interesting to see the partnerships form up, but high likelihood that we are exploring a vaccination site at the Lockhart Stadium site in partnership with Broward Health and Inter Miami, the soccer team. So good progress made on that this morning. I don't have any date to report that will be open. We certainly don't have any agreements in place at this point, but it's an active planning phase. And if we can get that one open, that would be more of a mega site that would be doing in the several thousands of vaccines a day as opposed to just 1,000. That's where we are with the different sites. So just a quick summary highlight, Mills Pond Park for all testing, Holiday Park appointment only for all vaccine, and stand by for further information on whether or not we get a vaccine site up and running at Lockhart Stadium.
Any questions of the city manager?
Yeah,
Okay. Yes, Commissioner.
thanks. I've just got a question about protocol and enforcement, if now's the right time to talk about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, great, thanks. So, Chris and Alan, give us where we stand in the, there's a host of various executive orders, state, so forth, that dictate what's permissible, what we as a city can and can't do in terms of enforcement. And by enforcement, I mean things like wearing masks, capacity at restaurants and businesses, social distancing. Give us, where are we right now on what are the mandates and what are we as a city able to do?
Well, currently we have the Broward County's, it's EO 2029, I believe, which is their comprehensive emergency order. And that dictates mostly what the regulations are throughout the county, including the city. As you know, there's an overriding order from the governor that puts some limitations on those with regards to closure of businesses, as well as the prevention of individuals being able to work. The county is aware of these, obviously, and we've piped in when we've needed to with regards to adhering to the governor's order. But that translates to essentially from an enforcement standpoint, where we can cite businesses for code violations. We cannot cite individuals for those violations. The county's taken a bit of a different approach on that, but we disagree from a legal standpoint. Their position is you can cite folks, you just can't collect fines from them, which sort of begs the question what the purpose of the citation's for. I believe they have the hopes that in one day they'll be able to collect at when the governor lifts his order, but I don't believe that's the intent of the order. But we really don't have a citation mechanism to cite individuals and not fine them. It's an exercise in futility. So I believe the governor's order precludes that, and we don't cite individuals, but we can cite businesses. We can't close the business. So we can't shut down a bar, let's say, that's violating. If we have rampant violations at a particular bar, we can charge them or fine them up to $15,000 per occurrence, but we can't shut them down. So from an enforcement standpoint, that's it. But with regards to some of the other questions, face mask wearing, some of the common sense restrictions within restaurants with distancing, spacing, things of that sort, those are all contained within the county's comprehensive emergency order. Which is actually very easily accessible online, and it's EO 2029.
Okay, great. So let's just take a deeper dive here. So restaurants, what capacity can restaurants indoor operate at right now?
It comes down to right now, as I see it, although the county is going to take potentially a different interpretation, because the governor's order states that you can limit capacity in a restaurant if you can substantiate two things in your order. One, the economic impact that your order is imposing on those restaurants, and two, obviously the health justification. The health justification is not a hard barrier. You can probably articulate that pretty well in an order. What's been a challenge is articulating the economic impact that it creates for restaurants. It's very hard to articulate. I would suspect the county believes that what they've put in their order is sufficient to do that, and there are others that would argue that it's not. The way I read the governor's order, unless it satisfies those two prongs, the restaurants can run at 100% capacity. So that's the position essentially we've taken. We're not really restricting capacity. And then there's a further argument above that. And again, a lot of these, some of them have gone to court, some of them have not. As you know, there was a federal case where we had a federal order come down. There's the overriding argument that those types of restrictions, capacity, coupled with the plexiglass requirements and the distancing requirements, that you can limit a business to such an extent that you're essentially shutting them down. So you take a restaurant's limitations too far, you're essentially taking that restaurant out of business, which then is precluded under the governor's order. And those are the arguments that have been raised in court, both federal and state. That argument so far has prevailed in federal court and led to the injunction against the county with regards to the restrictions on the serving of food and alcohol post midnight. So it is a matter of interpretation. Currently, I think, it's difficult to gauge on across the board. I believe it's still 100% outdoor, indoor together. Some may take a different position, but that's the city's position at this point.
That's what we're enforcing.
Yeah, that's what we're enforcing.
Does the 100% capacity allowance permit closer proximity than 6 feet?
No, those restrictions are still in place. You still have to be within 6 feet. So the table placing, seat placing, seating at bars, things of that sort, those are not, they're not precluded by the governor's order. So those are still in place. And thus far, I really haven't seen any that are so onerous that it would preclude a restaurant or a business from operating.
And is the 6 feet defined in a restaurant? That's 6 feet between dining parties? It can't be 6 feet between individuals.
No, typically the party restrictions now, I believe it's either 6 or 10 at a table. I believe it's 6, but I'd have to go back and look.
It's 6. It's 6 if, but it goes up to 10 if it's a family.
Same household, right? So, but it would be distancing between the tables. So obviously you're not going to have 6 feet with people sitting at the same table. It's impossible.
Right.
So you can have that limitation there. So that gathering there can be limited to 6 or 10, as the mayor alluded to, if you're from the same household. But distancing between the tables or seating or whatever they have in there has to be 6 feet. And then performers, I believe, have to be 10 feet, 12 feet. So if you have live entertainment, someone singing, they have to wear a mask and they have to be at least, I think 10 feet away from any tables.
And then individuals inside establishments that are not wearing masks, we as a city cannot fine them. We would have to fine the business. Is that
correct? So if you have a restaurant that there's rampant violations of no mask wearing, especially if it's the employees, they have more control over their employees than they do patrons. But even with your patrons, if they're allowing service to patrons that are just not wearing masks and the restaurant is full of, again, restaurants are a little difficult because once you start eating and drinking, you can't wear a mask. So those are a challenge, because at any given point in time, you'll see a number of people not wearing masks, but all very legitimately are not wearing masks because they're in a restaurant. But perhaps a bar is a better example, where if they're not immediately drinking, they're supposed to be wearing masks. Yes, you're correct. We can't go and cite the individuals. We would cite the business for failure to adhere to the COVID restrictions for establishments, which does, in that comprehensive order, require them to make sure that their patrons are wearing masks and adhering to the COVID-19 regulations or deny them service.
okay? And so are we doing that, Chris, from an enforcement standpoint? Let's just talk about masks to start with.
We are. Yeah, we've got some dedicated officers in our code group that report every day when they are out on enforcement the night before in bars and restaurants. And so the answer to your question is yes, we've issued citations to restaurants of different levels. We've issued $250 fines. We've issued $15,000 fines. We do actively enforce, yes.
Okay. So we enforce the masks. Now, the other concern I have is this capacity. And this is where it'd be really helpful to have a medical expert here. But the research I read is that 100% capacity in establishments, in places of business, increases the risk of transmission. Is that, Chris? Is that?
That's not necessarily incorrect, but the governor has restricted us in being able to regulate that.
But Ben, I think what's being said is, yes, you're allowed 100% capacity indoor and outdoor, but you still have to comply with the distance requirements. So whether or not a restaurant can effectively achieve 100% is another question. So I think you have to look at them together to be able to understand it. I agree with you 100%. There are some restaurants in the past that if you had 100% capacity, you're practically sitting on top of each other. But now the way the rules are being interpreted, you still have to comply with the distance requirement between tables and limit the number of persons per table. So whether that diminishes the 100% or not, depends on the amount of space in each individual establishment. But
Yeah.
but we always encourage people to eat outdoors. That way, the opportunity for infection is diminished. We're very fortunate here in Florida. For example, in New York City, they only allow outdoor dining. Well, try eating outdoors on Madison Avenue when it's 14 degrees out. So, so we're trying to manage capacity as well as effectiveness and allow these restaurants to still stay in business as best we can. But you have to look at the totality of the requirements in order to fully understand the expectations of the governor's order.
Sure, I do. And I mean, when I'm looking at restaurants, I don't think the totality is having a significant diminution on capacity. Just my own analysis. And I think that's not acceptable. I think that the governor is failing here. And I think as a city, we need to be doing more. We are in the greatest uptick of COVID-19. And according to all the experts I'm reading and talking to, it's going to get worse. And to be limited in what we can do as a city in terms of limiting capacity at businesses and to not even be able to contemplate or discuss it is a failure. And I think not acceptable.
Well, I think we all agree with you. First of all, yes, we're starting to see infection rates double what it was two months ago. Even in the beginning of December, we had an infection rate at 5 to 6%, and now it's
right now
yesterday it's like 10 or 11, which is
right.
totally unacceptable. If we had 10% 6 months ago, we'd be shutting down the city.
Right.
So somehow we have a higher tolerance now of infection rate as we're trying to balance the saving of lives and the protection of livelihoods. But there comes a tipping point where we have to understand what is going on here. The infection rate is far too high. The number of deaths are consistently higher than what we thought were going to be the case. And is hitting all demographics, young, old, comorbidities, no comorbidities. I mean, just look at Pio Irasi. I mean,
Right.
Man in his 50s, okay, not a candidate for infection, let alone death. So I don't know. I've spoken with Alan and Chris and members of the county, and our hands kind of are tied in many ways. First of all, we had the federal court ruling several weeks ago. We have the governor's order that was interpreted by the federal court ruling. The county is now appealing the federal court ruling to try to enforce its right to have curfews. So there's a lot going on here, but we have to do whatever we can to ensure the safety of people. And when we see businesses, certain bars on A1A on the beach, blatantly, violating our code requirements, we have fined them. I know one in particular got fined $15,000 over the weekend. That's not sustainable for any business. So we are making the effort, but I agree with you. I wish we could do more. And Alan is, we sit around a table and say we wish we could do more, but somehow we feel our hands are tied because of the federal court ruling and the Governor DeSantis's emergency orders.
Yeah, Mayor, I think well said. I completely agree. And that's where I just want to be clear of my frustration is the limited tools that we have to counteract the pandemic. And we're ultimately limited by the governor's order, Governor DeSantis. And it's frustrating and concerning to me as I just see the numbers rising, and I think they're going to keep getting worse. So I don't know how we communicate that to the governor. But I think, and I know Chris is in touch with the governor's office regularly, but I want that to be conveyed of our massive concern and frustration.
I want you to know that those concerns are being conveyed to the governor's office. And we're told they're they appreciate our concern. And so that's all we hear back. But the reality is that the governor's office also sort of winks at some of the restrictions that we try to impose in our community. Some of the things that we're even doing, I'm not even sure are contemplated by the governor. So, as long as you're not in your face kind of stuff, I think that the governor's office is willing to allow certain modifications to otherwise broad-based restrictions that that he has imposed on every city in the state. So we're doing our best, Commissioner. But the bottom line always is, and from day one, the bottom line has always been personal responsibility. People see a dangerous situation, stay away from it. If people are even thinking about participating in a dangerous situation, then shame on you. It's not the fault of the business. It's your fault for participating in what is otherwise an opportunity for this disease to spread. New Year's Eve, I was with one person. Many opportunities to go to parties, and I've seen videos on Facebook this past week that made me want to vomit, to see how some of these nightclubs and so forth were packing people in, no masks. Even the bartenders were not wearing masks. And you go to the owners of these places and they just blow you off. It's like they just say, if you don't want to be here, then don't come. That's their attitude. So I don't know the answer, Commissioner. We're doing our best. I know Chris and his staff and our police department and everybody is doing their best. Portia in code enforcement, she has marching orders from us, but there's only so much that she can do as we try to turn the corner on the spread of this virus. But 10 and 11 and 12% infection rates every day, deaths, 10, 12 deaths a day, countywide, that is. Fortunately, Fort Lauderdale is not the hottest spot in the county. The last mayor's call that I was a participant in, when was that, 2 weeks ago, Chris? The hot spots were out west. The hot spots were in Miramar and Cooper City area. I don't know what the explanation is for that, but believe it or not, Fort Lauderdale was not considered in the red zone. So that's not to make us all feel good about what we're doing. I see when I go into Publix or I go into CVS or whatever store I go into, everyone has to wear a mask. And I thank all those businesses for enforcing those rules. But when it comes to entertainment, it's a different set of rules. At least they think so. And so we're doing our best. And I applaud the chief of police. I applaud code enforcement for their heroic efforts in trying to manage this crisis under the conditions that we are given.
Mayor, I have a couple questions and comments.
Yes, please.
And in response to Commissioner Sorensen, I believe one tool we have is the vaccine. So I also believe we need to do a lot more to get this vaccine out there. And, one thing obviously the governor's office is doing is sending EMS down here to open a new site. Hopefully they're opening new sites around the state too.
The problem, Commissioner, is the governor is only given so many doses.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
So one question, Chris, or Mayor, if because you all are on different calls, are we receiving a distribution of vaccines based on our population or based on our percent positive rate? Like, do more populous areas get more vaccines? Do areas
we were encouraged.
More rates?
We were encouraged this weekend when I received a call from the governor's team that they wanted to open up this mega site at the Lockhart Stadium parking lot, and I said, "That's great, but how many doses? We need 100,000 doses a month to be able to really make an impact in our community." And they kind of said, "Yeah, we wish we could get that too." So it's all coming from the federal government. How they allocate it. I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason. I don't know. I think Governor DeSantis, if anyone has an in the White House, it's him. Okay. So whatever can be gotten, I think that he's doing his best to try to get those doses here. But but every single state is complaining about not having enough doses to go around. I mean, in November we were told that Pfizer had 100 million doses already on the shelf. Well, where are they?
Well, I mean, I've also read that the vaccines are still sitting on the shelf, that they haven't been distributed.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to learn that we are trying to open up an additional distribution site, because I mean, I've read reports, like I'm sure you all have, that they're kind of sitting on the shelf. They need more manpower to get it going. But one question I have, and hopefully we are getting more vaccines, because I know the feds distributed them to the state based on population. So then is the state in turn distributing them to the counties based on population or percent positive? I'd be curious to know that. It doesn't matter, but where I'm kind of getting with this is, I believe anybody from anywhere in the state can get a shot or a vaccine, I'm sorry, in our county. You don't have to be a resident of Broward County to get the vaccine. You don't have to be a resident of the state of Florida to get the vaccine. You don't have to be a resident of our country to get the vaccine. So we could be giving vaccines. Not that I'm not arguing against it, but knowing and hearing a ton of complaints like you all have about, our residents trying to even make a call or get the call answered or get on the website. I would hope we'd be able to get our over 65 population the vaccine, but I understand that's complicated.
Commissioner,
But
can I respond to that just real
yeah.
quick? And maybe I can provide a little bit of additional information. This is just what I'm hearing now, but I think it's important that you all hear it, because when I ask the same question, this is the answer I get. That there is vaccination quantity is not an issue would be an issue at either of our two testing sites. There's two vaccines that are out right now that we have heard of, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. We are administering at this point the Pfizer vaccine or will be administering that at Holiday Park, and that's because the Department of Health in Broward County has the right storage capacity to be able to receive that vaccine. That's the one that requires that ultra cold freezing, where the Moderna vaccine can exist in just the common freezer. And so in talking with the COO from Broward Health earlier today, when we talked about how they were landing on a decision of which of the two vaccines to pursue for Lockhart Stadium, they said because there are fewer receiving sites for the Pfizer vaccine, because you have to have more infrastructure in place, that they believe that because they're one of those organizations that can actually receive it, that in the long term there will be more of those available than the Moderna. So their preference was to lean towards the Pfizer vaccine if we get this new vaccination site up and running. And it was because they felt long term they could get more.
But do those freezers that they have, are they big enough to handle,
Their response to me was, don't worry about quantity. That's not our concern.
Okay.
So the concern is
Your lips to God's ears.
Yeah,
Right, that being able to
we
do
just said, let's then full speed ahead on getting them into people. And
Okay.
so
currently, I know Holiday Park can vaccinate how many a day?
So it will start at 500 a day, as is, if Lockhart starts, it would start at 50% of its eventual capacity too. That is because 3 weeks from now, when you need the second dose, they need to be doing an equal number of second doses and first doses to do what the total site capacity is. So even though it only starts as 500, that's just for 3 weeks, and then it will become 1,000.
So Lockhart will become 1,000,
We think Lockhart has the potential to be multiple thousand.
multiple thousands a day.
Correct.
So a
Yeah.
couple thousand a day
Right.
at Lockhart, and whatever, maybe the Johnson & Johnson one will be out by then too, which is a single dose also. So EMS is a different branch running this site. What will the communication be? Like right now, I'm looking at that website that you sent us. Will
Mhm.
it be the same website when I'm trying to direct people?
It will for the Holiday Park site. For any
Okay.
of the things that DOH in Broward County is operating, that is the one-stop shop for a vaccine.
What
If
about
we
Lockhart?
partner with Broward Health for Lockhart Stadium, they will have their own scheduling system, which will include both, as I understand it, a web-based scheduler as well as a phone option.
So Broward Health will manage the website, the phone number, because I know Broward Health already did that when they gave a few rounds of vaccines and they ran out.
They've got a site up at the Spectrum building up off of Commercial today that is doing about 250 a day. So they're in the field. They recognize the importance and the value of getting these vaccines into the public. And if we can figure out how to move their operation that's doing 250 and move it across the street and multiply that by 20, that's a better solution.
Okay, so their corporate headquarters where they're operating are right now across from Lockhart on Commercial?
No, they just
Or
they
east?
they indicate that they just have a small pod set up.
They have
at
a
the
pod out
Spectrum
there.
building, so just
Okay.
put it in proximity for you. But they're doing about 250 seniors a day.
All right.
This would be a substantial increase from that.
Okay, so currently I'm just communicating to neighbors, go to the website that you've already shared with us.
Yeah, for right now, go to the website. I've also had people, and we talk about whether or not you have to be from Broward County. I had somebody reach out to me this morning asking, how do I get a vaccine in Holiday Park? And I responded with, here's the website on how you can do it. And they responded, within an hour later and said, thanks, but we were able to schedule Saturday and Sunday in Dade County. And so we have some of our folks that are even,
Really?
going to places where they can just get a test. Duval County is very easy, user friendly on the website. If I was 65, I could have scheduled on their website yesterday.
So our
so-
own residents can go to different counties too. So that's
Correct.
kind of vice versa. But so right now I'm communicating the website you sent us from Broward Department of Health or Florida Department of Health in Broward. And then we will start communicating the website and phone number, what that Broward Health will manage and operate. And that will be at Lockhart.
Yeah, and let me just be very clear. Once we know all that information, we literally had the first discussion on the topic this morning.
Right. So you'll
So,
communicate that to us
Yeah,
and we'll share.
I just don't have it yet. And I don't want the public to think that all of a sudden we're going to pop one up tomorrow.
Sure.
It'll be a couple days.
Well, that's a good point in terms of communication. I believe the last one I shared may have been Friday. Do we have another communication from the city that's more updated that we can share, or did I?
We will once we indicated we would share again once the website was up and running.
Broward County's website.
It is not up and running yet. I
Right.
just even checked now.
Yeah, I
so,
just checked too. Yeah. Okay.
we have that communication ready to go, but we've told people what our plan is. Now I want to make sure that when they actually try to execute the plan, that they go to a website that works.
Okay. I mean, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you updating us. It was strange when I heard on Sunday that the site was open and people were able to get appointments. So we don't know necessarily, but I don't know.
The thing that
It's-
wasn't on the site on Friday when it was open for the brief period of time when it was open
Yep.
was Holiday Park. So, there were other testing sites that were there.
Vaccination sites.
Or vaccination. I use those words
Yep.
now,
Right.
unfortunately, too interchangeably. There were other vaccination sites that were on that website when it was live, but our park was not. So when it
Correct,
comes
yes.
back, our park will be on.
Right. I know our park wasn't. I'm just trying to see how I can share the information with my district. And it did apparently open up on Sunday, not in our city, but in our county. We just didn't know about it. I'm not saying it's your responsibility. I'm just trying to figure out how to get the information.
All I could encourage people to do is just to check frequently.
To keep check.
The Broward Department of Health has indicated to me that they've been working around the clock with a partner in Amazon Web Services, and Amazon does great things. And so, they've been working around the clock to have it become robust enough that it doesn't crash when it gets
Sure.
the volume.
No,
that it's
I
needed.
appreciate that. So we will communicate when we are opening Holiday Park or Lockhart. So, all right, thank you. And then we'll share that.
Great, thank you. I see Omar is here. Were you here to report on the undergrounding?
Hold on, Mayor, I still want to talk about COVID.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Commissioner.
Thanks. So I just want to be so clear about a couple things. One, the vaccine is very important and everyone should get a vaccine as soon as they're able. And the last couple days in the nation, we've averaged about 500,000 vaccinations a day. The estimates are even if we got up to 2 million a week, it would take us 5 years to get to the 80% of the population vaccinated that we need to get to, that experts say. So vaccines are not enough. We need to take the distancing, masking, capacity requirements very seriously. Vaccines are not going to get us there by themselves. So I just want to make sure we're all kind of tracking that we can't solely rely on vaccines. We have to keep the enforcement and we have to challenge to have our ability to limit the spread as much as possible. The second piece is, yes, the idea of Personal responsibility is critical, right? We all should be responsible. If we were all completely responsible, we would not need to have the discussion about the police and radars and noise from vehicles. The fact is that even though there are laws and rules, we don't all follow them. Because of that, we have to enforce for the greater protection, for the greater good. Therefore, we as a city need to be doing all that we can and challenging to be able to do more to make sure that those individuals that choose not to do the right thing will be penalized and will be forced to do the right thing. And Mayor, I know I know you agree with me on this. I know I'm not, I'm not arguing with you, but I just want to make these points to emphasize the severity of a place that we're facing right now. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else would like to add to this discussion before we move on? Okay. Omar, do you want to give us an update, or Raj want to give us an update on the 18th Street, 15th Avenue log jam?
Yeah, we'll get both of them to I can see in my rearview mirror.
I see a drawing and a map.
I'm sorry. It is not quite the logjam, Mr. Mayor. I think it is what they had done is that they are doing an open cut with this, this is Murphy's segment of the undergrounding. So at these critical juncture, when you are, the pipe is going pretty deep and it comes out, and there the connection has to be as an open cut so that they can put the other connections in. At that location, it's a 90-degree bend that they are doing it. And between the holidays, they were just like, they've been working long hours. So between the holidays, there has been some, vacation time, downtime for them. But they are working, they are on schedule. And we hope to have that work completed in about a month's time. But because of the severity, in the sense that they need to be very careful when they are doing the open cut for the, just to make sure that the connections are proper and any conflicts are avoided.
So it's going to be another month before that area is.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
And also in response to the previous questions about as they complete certain segments, they are going to restore that segment to restore the area. But once the project is completed, they are going to come and resurface the entire segment. So it is going to be in two parts. They are going to fix what they are going to disturb now. And when after the work is done, they are going to come as in one shot. Okay.
Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yes, sir.
Okay, moving on to communications. We have one communications from the Planning and Zoning Board. This was a request to authorize staff to review the city's code in respect to parking requirements for townhouse and cluster developments and bring forth potential recommendations. I believe the commission has also asked for that as we pass the new downtown master plan. One component that was not reviewed was parking requirements. I believe that currently there's no parking requirement, and I think that at least one member of the commission, including myself, feels that we need to start requiring at least one parking space per unit in all new developments. So I would love to see that come up as an agenda item on a commission, on a conference meeting, so that we can move forward on that. I believe there were a couple of other items, but that in particular, I think, Anthony, you want to come up and respond to that?
Let's see, Anthony.
He's here.
Here? All right. You also, Mr. Mayor, have the chair of the board. I believe that's called in if you have any questions of the board's action.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor Anthony Fajardo. Yes, we can definitely bring that back as an item. And as the city manager just mentioned, Catherine Moss is on the line to talk about the request from Planning and Zoning Board. They're not directly related to each other. The downtown core does not have a parking requirement. I believe what the chair and the Planning and Zoning Board are referring to are cluster and townhouse developments only. So that would be typically anywhere in the city, not just the downtown.
Right. So, but if I recall correctly, we were told by a member of your staff that we needed to have a study done. And I don't know how long that study takes, but, you know, we need to move forward as quickly as we can because, you know, as new developments begin to materialize in our community, we need to have in place these requirements. Otherwise, it's going to be a nightmare trying to accommodate people who need parking, and especially if they need to move into a building and there's no parking for them, it really diminishes the desirability of any of these new projects that are coming up. So whatever you can do to accelerate that process, we'd appreciate.
Yes, sir.
Catherine, do you want to add anything to this conversation? Are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm here. Commission, Mayor, thank you. Our particular request came as a result from reviewing a cluster dwelling application in the southwest section of the city. Cluster dwellings come to, cluster dwelling applications tend to come from parcels that are in underdeveloped portions of the city. So we had yet another cluster dwelling application. It had no guest parking provided for because that is what the code says. And then we discussed where the placement of garbage bins would go. That would be garbage, recycling, and landscape materials. And there was no provision for the placement of those other than in the garages of the residents, which means they're not going to get more than maybe one car in a 2-car parking garage. And despite everyone drives around a bigger car these days as well, but the developers are still building the same small parking space. So we were able to resolve that one by asking the applicant to work administratively with staff to put in some parking on the swale, but it would be so much easier for applicants as well as residents and neighbors if that was part of the process going in. There wouldn't be any miscommunications, unexpected hitches. The applicant in that particular situation was upset that he was going to have to potentially lose some time, but Ms. Parker was very helpful in suggesting that she would handle it administratively and that it would get done. But we just continue to see this with cluster dwellings. They need to have a required amount of guest parking. It's better for applicants. It's better for the people who are going to live in those units, and it's better for the neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. I think your point is well taken. Does anyone from the commission have any additional comments?
Yeah, Mayor, I think that was good from Catherine too. And the other, Anthony, the other topic I'm forgetting, there was a third topic. It was parking. It was minimum requirement for space. You were going to research the wind piece as well. Maybe was a third, and maybe there was a fourth, Anthony.
I don't recall a fourth. The wind were
Was
looking
wind.
into, but
Yeah,
I'm not sure there was a fourth.
it was probably the third was the wind. So you're working on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
You're welcome. Anything else from any other member of the commission? Okay, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. Okay, so we'll move through.
Mayor, just to be clear, because the board itself cannot just make recommendations as to changes to the LDR. So I just wanted to make clear that it's the commission's desire for staff to look, because there's the master plan issue, as Mr. Fajardo pointed to, but this is a separate issue on the cluster for the remainder of the city. So just wanted to be clear that that's something the city commission wants staff to do.
I think there's a consensus amongst the commission that we'd like city staff to look into that.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So now we are moving forward on business one, Las Olas Marina project update. We have a couple of people that have signed up to speak. I think they're probably here to respond to questions as Mr. Robert Lockery and Mr. David Filler. David, are you on the line?
He's there. Just
Okay.
waiting for him to
Yes, I am.
Hi, how are you, David?
Good. Happy New Year to everyone. And it's been nice to hear that everything's going great. And I'm actually super happy that the football team did so well.
Yes. So why don't we begin with a staff presentation as to what the status is? I believe there's a backup on as Exhibit 1. It's not really very clear how to read this, but maybe
Ben's going to walk us through it. So
Ben's going to walk us through.
he is.
How are you, Ben? How are you, Ben?
Good. Thank you, Mayor. Ben Rogers, Transportation Mobility. So, Mr. Mayor, as you alluded to, David Filler and Robert Lockery are on the phone if we have any questions for Suntex. But this is an update on the Marina project, the pre-development efforts, and where we stand in the negotiations now.
Okay, can you please speak up?
Yes, sorry about that. So the project has 9 items that we want to discuss today, and I wanted to find out your preference, Mayor, if you wanted me to touch on all of them or if you want to go by one and have discussion on each one.
Let's do one by one and have discussion, because if you go to 9, we're going to forget the questions and number.
So on the current slide, the very first item is the parking agreement. That one was completed in July of 2020. We provided 215 reserve spaces up for Suntex in the Los Olas garage, an additional 100 permits in there as well. It is kind of a scalable effort, so they can add as they grow. But that one has been completed and checked off the box.
Anyone have any questions with regard to that? Okay, keep going.
The second item is the state of Florida FDEP, their approval. So the Suntex took 2 items to the state in September. Both of those were contingent on some conditions being satisfied, but they were approved. And so we're working on those 2 things now. The first one, I believe, was an uplands deed reverter, and the second one had to do with a private easement for the development of an additional 170,000 square feet of water space.
Okay, so the DEP approval is with regard to dredging the site?
That's part of it. And I'll have to defer some of this to the city attorney if he wants to weigh in. But what this one is for us, we're really a third party on the side of this. But as part of that outcome between Suntex and the state, we need to amend our ground lease with them, which is commission number 210031, which we'll discuss later in the presentation.
Okay. Any questions with regard to this?
Mayor, just one. And so, Ben, how do you see the timeline for the pending sign off on those 2 items, especially what's contingent on that CAM? When do you think we're going to wrap that up?
So for the state of Florida, what we're hearing from Suntex is they're expecting 30 to 45 days once we finalize the ground lease on our side. We've been working hand in hand with Suntex over the last couple of months. We kind of pencil these in every meeting. Depending on how our negotiations go, will depend on where when we bring that forward to commission.
Okay. And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about it later on in terms of the leases. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The third item is a revocable license. That's your typical revocable license. It's identifying the impacts of the right-of-way during construction, has a 5-phase maintenance of traffic plan. It's your standardized revocable license.
Okay, any questions, Vice Mayor? Do you have any problems with that?
Not necessarily a problem, but I know that we got a memo this morning. I'm looking for it. I haven't had a chance to study it that much. Here it is. Hold on a second. Ben, can you just quickly go through the issues of the revocable license that are not really explained in detail in this particular presentation?
Yeah, so as I indicated, there's 5 phases to the MOT. I do have those MOT pictures with me today if you want to go through them. But it does have 5 phases. Each of them are about 6 months in length. And I think the last one is about 18 months in length. There's a 42-month period of time that there would be an active MOT on site.
Okay. And how do we see that in terms of timeline? I'm reading from the memo that we received this morning at about 11 a.m. And it does talk about, highlights the 5 phases that you just mentioned: maintenance of traffic plan, parking mitigation requirements, includes standard inspection utility, and building code provisions. So it does say under review. When do we expect that will be wrapped up?
Yeah, this one's nearing completion. There were some word choices that we need to figure out dealing with parking mitigation because there will be a loss of 9 on-street parking spaces at Birch. So we've got to finalize that language, but the majority of this one is agenda ready. And it's just pending some of the other items before we bring it to commission.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Continue, please.
The procurement waiver, that one too is nearing completion and almost agenda ready. That one is just allowing the commission to waive the procurement rules for the next 2 agreements, which are the D31 lift station relocation and the turn lane modification.
Any questions?
Is that going to come to us within the next 2 meetings?
I think that's the goal, Vice Mayor, but what we're going to do is group all these commission items and bring it forward in one commission night. So it's contingent on how the other negotiations go.
Okay, if we get bogged down in one in particular, can we maybe at least move forward with what we think is ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, I can defer to the city attorney. I know a lot of these are
a lot of them are contingent on the amendment to the lease. If we don't negotiate the amendment to the lease, then these other items are irrelevant.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay, please.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Please continue.
The next item is the D31 lift station relocation. We talked to this in depth in August when we did our last update. This one is the city providing $2.5 million, Suntex providing $400,000 to relocate and replace the hardware in the pump station that's current in the current site plan. We're finalizing negotiations. I think there's 2 items that are going on right now. We're about 90% done with the business terms. We've got to identify a couple things related to funding and financial considerations. And then I recently forwarded this to the city's attorney's office to do a deep dive and legal review on all the legal items.
Any questions with regard to the lift station?
I do. Have we come to final agreement, Ben, with how the city is going to be splitting the costs, and have we agreed to that with Suntex?
So we're considerably there. As I said, we're 2.5 on the city and 400,000 on Suntex, which gives us 2.9, which is their budgeted estimate for the project. What we're working on right now is kind of an overage cap. What if we run into some unforeseen, unknown expenditures? And so that's what we're negotiating now on figuring out how much more we'd come out of pocket before we come back to commission.
And how close are we to agreement on that overage contingency cap?
I'd have to defer to the city manager, but I think we're pretty close.
Okay.
Any other questions with regard to the lift station? Okay, turn lane modification.
We're in the same situation with the turn line modifications. We're dealing with the business terms. I think we're 90% of the way there. Waiting on a red line back from Suntex. Once we receive that, then we'll forward it to the city attorney for a deeper review.
Ben?
Yes, sir.
Any outstanding issues on that turn lane modification with regards to the county?
Yeah, I think there's some considerations that we'll have to look into. We're working with Anthony's department at DSD and the plat amendment. So I believe the city is going to have to make some amendments to the plat while Suntex is developing the turn lane.
And is all of that happening as we speak?
All the discussions are very active. I'd have to defer to Anthony on the status of that, but I think that we've got the plan ironed out, and it's just executing once we get the turn lane agreement back.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, have you spoken about the turn lane yet? That was it,
yes.
Right? Yeah. Ground lease 4th Amendment.
Yes, Mayor, these next 2 or 3 are all in the city's attorney office right now. These are the heavy hitters, if we say, for the things that need to be reviewed. The ground lease 4th Amendment, as I said earlier, is reflective of the conversations that Suntex had with the state for their approval. And there's a lot of considerations that go into this. We received all of them in the month of December, and so Alan's team is working diligently right now to make sure that one thing doesn't impact the other.
Well, let's talk about this for just a second. Is this affecting the financial terms?
It will be, and that's part of the process that we're undergoing now. We're still reviewing, but some of the highlights. Obviously, the state has imposed various conditions. The major of which, and I'm going to the upland deed amendment also sort of plays very heavily with the lease amendment. So I'm going to kind of treat the two together. So the way the state has dictated it, we lose complete control of the submerged land leased area, as well as two areas. There's private easements to the north and to the south that will be strictly with Suntex. So we lose the revenue for the wet slips there, and we also lose complete control of it. And that has to be removed from they're demanding that be removed from our existing lease. So you're going to lose revenue from the wet slips, and you're going to and the existing wet slips and those that fall within the submerged land lease. The submerged land lease area is being extended somewhat to the west, and also through a private easement through the north and the south. Those revenues are gone. Then we have to enter into a restrictive covenant, which essentially encumbers the fee interest of the city, which is the upland portion. The city is going to have to pay the greater of either 15% of the net revenue from operations on the uplands, or 110% plus 6% of all wet slips revenue. And those wet slips referenced there are those that are on the upland portion that'll be dredged out. That's currently the lot. And those will be out of the submerged land lease area, but up on the upland area as it is now. Those wet slips we have to pay on. Previously in our original lease, all payments to the state were being sort of passed through Suntex. In the draft of the fourth amendment to the lease, there's no language as to that. So that's something that needs to be worked out, because that is going to be a loss of revenue.
Well, you say worked out. This information that you're giving to us flips this entire deal on its head. I mean,
can I interject?
We're going from a net revenue generator for the city for a smaller marina to now where this is going to actually cost money to the taxpayers of this community to try to undertake this change. And I mean,
and unless again that
deal killer,
unless the deal is negotiated to take care of that. There's also another factor in there that was added to the draft about at some point in time to extend the northern portion for the wet slips to accommodate the larger yachts. A deal was entered into with Portofino to move their riparian lines, or at least allow us or Suntex to encroach upon the setbacks. We have seen that agreement. We just got it this week. However, there's no consideration in that agreement, no talk of money. However, the fourth amendment to the lease that was provided to us by Suntex talks about the city paying for the money that they're paying Portofino. So I don't know what kind of side deal.
It only gets worse.
Portofino, but I haven't seen anything with regards to Portofino and what amount of money is being paid to them. And presumably, according to what's been drafted and presented to us, the city would be paying for that as well. So that's not something the city's ever agreed to. And that's something obviously we're looking into to see if we can get more details on. So again, it's a work in progress, but there are these pretty big issues that we're going to need to look at to see exactly what the ramifications are. Granted, some of them obviously are dictated by the state, but they weren't necessarily contemplated when the first lease was negotiated. So these are things that we have to consider and look at and see exactly what the impacts on the city are going to be.
So the question is, what's in it for the city? What do we get out of this? You know, over the years, we were generating income from a parking lot, and obviously there's a greater demand. There's also a great demand for dockage space, and we want to always be able to continue to find opportunities for new dockage space, especially for the larger boats as they continue to grow in size. But at the same time, now it sounds to me as though this entire undertaking is going to be very expensive for the city. So instead of it being a net revenue generator, it's going to be an expense to the city. And I hope, each member of the commission is understanding that, this is a completely different deal. And so when we talk about negotiating a fourth amendment to the ground lease, what that means is we have to make sure that we aren't still holding the short end of the stick and putting a burden on our budget to create an amenity to enhance the business operations of a third party. I mean, I'm sure Suntex didn't expect any of this either. So I think we're all kind of being blindsided. Wait, let me finish my statement. I think we're all being blindsided here by the expectations of the state because neither party, the city or Suntex, ever thought that this was going to be the arrangement that we would end up with. So was that you, Vice Mayor, that wanted to speak?
That was Mr. Filler.
No, that's Mr. Filler. But I do before David speaks, I do want to say, Alan, you mentioned an agreement that the Suntex has come to with the neighbor to the north, Portofino, and with regards to the riparian line and adding slips for larger vessels. I would find it really hard to believe that if that comes to fruition, that we're not going to see some sort of monetary gain from something like that. I would leave it up to you, but I don't see how that could be a loss to us. But I want to hear what Mr. Filler has to say.
Well, let me just point to the fact that what they've proposed to us is the city contributing and paying for those remunerations, whatever they are, to Portofino. That's what's in the draft that was presented to us. When we asked for the agreement between Portofino and Suntex, we did receive an agreement, speaking of the riparian lines and the setbacks, but there's no monetary consideration in that agreement. So I don't know what money they're talking about, and I don't know to what extent. Again, the city's never agreed to pay that aspect of it. That's a private deal with them.
Right, I understand, but I certainly would hope that we would see some sort of revenue from a deal like that. But let's see what Mr. Filler has to say.
David? Are you still there?
He's there. I'm just wondering if we put him on mute or if he put himself on mute. And if we did it, we need to unmute.
Mr. Filler, you're on mute.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, I think there might be some confusion. The language and the modification to the state agreement in no way whatsoever impacts any of the financial consideration to the city. The problem that the state was having was that the way that the lease was written, it looked like the city was conveying rights to property that it didn't have. And the state took, challenge to that and said, look, they don't have the right to assign our lease. We have to enter into a separate lease, but in no way does any of the slip revenue whatsoever be impacted, so that the city gets the exact same deal that they bargained for from day one. So nothing set forth, and if Alan's reading that, I apologize, and I'm sure we can work with council to get through that, but nothing is designed in any way, shape, or form to in any way impact any of the revenues that the city would receive. We've worked long and hard to preserve that, and the state is not suggesting that. So all they're having problems with is the potential conveyance, transfer, or assignment of rights to property that the city doesn't own. The state is insisting on direct privity with Suntex in the lease, which typically happens in many of our submerged land leases. We often close when we buy marinas. We close without a new submerged land lease because the state won't issue one until you can show possession or control, either through a leasehold interest or through a deed that you have control over the property. But I'm happy to get with council and with Alan and to sort of show the city attorney why that there's no impact whatsoever to any of the financial terms to this marina. In fact, through diligent and effort and working with all of the stakeholders, our original under the lease contribution was 20 million. We're probably somewhere in the 45 to 50 million dollars. So it's big expenditures to really deliver a world-class, first-class marina to the city, and the city's income and revenues as a result of this have probably doubled. And that is through partially because we were able to work with Portofino. We are not asking the city to lay out any money whatsoever for the expansion of the submerged land rights that we got from Portofino. We're just asking for credits, which we've made everyone aware of. I've met with the city auditor. I've gone over the financial numbers with him, and the city makes substantial dollars as a result of that expansion relating to Portofino, but the city is not having to write any checks or make any payments at all. It's just not paying two rents for the land that we acquired. So there's some offset, but the net present value is of that expansion benefits the city anywhere from 11 to 15 million dollars, depending on what NPV discount rate you apply. So it's hundreds of thousands of dollars per year as a benefit to the city in the form of rent. So we are trying to work diligently with all the stakeholders to deliver a bigger, better, and more resilient facility that doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. In fact, it's a huge windfall because of the efforts in working with all the stakeholders that we are able to achieve. As far as what Alan is referring to as the change in the payments to the state, I think, Mayor, you were aware, originally it was 50% that the city had to pay as a result of leasing the land as it relates to the deed reverter. We were successful in getting that knocked down to 15% for the remaining uplands and 6%. So it went from either 50 to 15 or 50 to 6, and that's going to run with the land forever. So that was a huge win that affects the city's rights, forever. And we did it on our dollar and at no cost to the city, which provides, future use of that property for any party that would ever lease it, a great benefit to the city as far as being able to attract businesses or, marina lessees in the future. So I think that's a huge windfall. The expansion of the rights to Portofino at no cost to the city is a great thing as well. So if there's some confusion, we're more than happy to get with city council and go through that and walk him through because there appears to be some kind of disconnect or confusion in the reading of the amendments.
Well, the amendment is pretty clear. The language says dollar for dollar on the Portofino, but we can argue that
on a credit. Yeah, on a credit. You don't have to pay.
It's a dollar for dollar reduction of our rent that you owe us. And the 50% that was before was paid through Suntex. It wasn't coming out of our pocket. But we can deal with the attorneys, that's fine. But all that's been represented isn't reflected on paper. And that needs to be reflected on paper before we can move ahead with an amendment. So we're more than willing to work with Suntex to do that, but what's just been represented on the record needs to be reflected on paper and in writing.
Well, of
Yes, so
course.
can we all get together and make sure that everything that is being expressed today is reflected on paper?
We've been actively working with Brian DeVos, which is one of their lead counsel with regards to this and some other councils. So we are in communications with them, but certainly Mr. Filler's comments will be taken to Mr. DeVos, and we will make sure that gets incorporated within the agreement.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Someone's already seen this, but I'd like to see like a financial analysis of what this looks like and what the projection is, 10, 20, 30 years out. Do we have that?
Not currently, because we're still, that aspect obviously staff to work on. I'm not a mathematician, but we're trying to figure out, first of all, what's being proposed, what the state is actually mandating. We're still waiting on some documentation from the state. We probably want to talk to the state as well. And then, because we did talk to them before prior to the approval, but we need to talk to them again. And once we have all those pieces in place, I think that's probably a wise idea for staff to look at it and see exactly, crunch the numbers and see where we're at.
Yeah, I think David could, he could provide that as well, and we could do our own, and then we can, that's an important piece to me in fully understanding this.
I agree with you, Commissioner, and I think Mr. Filler is trying to give us a comfort level also in not misunderstanding what I thought was being proposed today, and working with Mr. Boileau and trying to sift through all the nuances here. I just want to say one thing though, with the state wanting to be in direct privity with Mr. Filler. I just from a legal point of view, I think it handicaps us by not having leverage to collect should something come up where, you know, we find ourselves in a position to want to collect on the amounts that are going to be paid to us, because we're no longer in a landlord tenant situation. We're just being given a chose of action and contract. Isn't that correct?
Correct. We lose control of over all those wet slips that are going to be under the submerged land lease, so that we can't touch, and we can't touch the revenue. We have no control.
Right. We just have a right to sue. That's all.
Right, on a contractual standpoint.
A contractual
with regards
standpoint.
to the upland property.
Right.
But with regards to the submerged land lease, we're out of it.
We're out of it. And it's based on a contractual obligation of Suntex to fulfill that obligation once, since we're taken out of the landlord-tenant relationship.
Correct.
I don't know if any of you understood what I just said.
Well, just to be clear, non-payment of rent under the submerged land lease obligations would be a default under the terms of the lease. You can hold us in default, and you could then kick us out.
But we're not the landlord anymore, David.
Yes, you are. You're the landlord of the upland property. The upland property grants the rights to the wet, but you don't own. The state is saying you don't own the wet. It's sovereign submerged state lands.
Right.
So they're saying that you can't, as a city, convey it. All you can convey is the right to get a lease from the state. It's a little tricky, right? So, but if we default under our obligations to pay you rent in the sovereign submerged land area, if we don't pay you that money, we would be default in the lease, which would give us those rights to the wet. It's a little bit tricky, but we still are under default.
But there's no automatic reverter on the submerged land lease. So whoever has the upland property has to reapply at that point. So if at some point we become possessors again as lessors of the upland property, we have to reapply for the submerged land lease with the state. It's not an automatic reverter.
It's not automatic, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, and the thing is, this is a long-term lease, and I'm really not looking so much at Suntex for performance. I'm looking at the big conglomerate you're going to sell to someday, and trying to get them to pony up to their obligations. I always look in that direction because that's the way business is done these days. So while I take your representations at face value, I'm always concerned about the next party with whom we would have to deal down the road. Should you no longer be the person, you're the entity involved in this transaction. But I think what Commissioner Sorensen has said, trying to get a financial analysis of this is probably appropriate at this point. We're all going into this in good faith and as you are, but we really need to make sure that in the final analysis that the city and the community are going to benefit from this and not it being an additional burden. That's all.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to find out how often are Alan and David Filler, or at least Alan and counsel for David, how often are they checking in on the phone and just in communication over all of this?
Well, that's dictated on the instruments before us. Obviously, Mr. Rogers has been dealing with counsel a great deal in the minutia, but our office has, there's no way to really quantify it. Lynn Solomon and from my group is speaking with Mr. DeVos. I don't always have direct contact with them, but we have communications. It's dictated. Obviously now we have more to talk about following this meeting. So we'll obviously be communicating more from this point on, but the lines of communications are there and they're cordial and they're professional. But again, the verbal has to be represented in the writing.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that, everyone's talking and this is, we're driving forward and we're doing all we can in a timely way. I know a lot of people, there were some comments and I'll get into them later from the District 2 pre-agenda meeting last evening. People are just sort of, there's a sense of urgency out there. There's a lot of information that was given to them, like for instance, in August that the boat show agreement was done, and yet we're still seeing now on our slide that we received it on December 29th, and it's still under legal review, and the neighborhoods looking for updates, and it's just, I know COVID had a big part of this. I know that we were delayed, 7-8 months at the state level with a cabinet not meeting. And I understand all of those factors. We got hit with a lot of things at once, but I just want to make sure that we're all moving forward as quickly as possible together, and just getting what we need to get done. That's all. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question? David, what's the status of the federal permits with regard to this site?
So the federal permits are waiting for the state permits, but I believe they've already sent out their notices and are somewhat teed up to some degree, but I would need to check back with Eric on the exact status of that. Eric was supposed to be on the call with me, but his wife had a baby early, so he's our first Las Olas Marina baby of the new year. But so we're all happy for Eric, but he had a little bit a better handle on that. But I'm happy to get back to you with greater detail.
Yes, our best wishes go out to him. I understand that the baby was delivered under stressful situations. So I'm so happy it's a healthy baby. All right. So how about the upland amendment and the boat show agreement?
The upland deed amendment kind of we spoke of somewhat,
right,
with the restrictive covenant that's part and parcel to what's going to be required with the lease. So I think we've covered that.
Okay, we have. And the boat show
There's
agreement?
other things in the weeds with regards to responsibilities and liabilities and all that, but we can work on that, clarify that.
Okay.
In the background.
And now the boat show agreement. I understand we got a copy of the boat show agreement, but it's been heavily redacted. So
right, we received it finally on the.
Looks like the Mueller report.
It's 70 pages, and there are quite a few sections that are redacted. Obviously, they're claiming some trade secret aspects of it. I'm still reviewing it to see in the lease, as we've discussed before. It requires the delivery of this to us, and we need to make sure that it doesn't conflict with any of the requirements from the state with regards to submerged land lease and so on and so forth. I'm trying to determine whether we as a city are able to make that determination with the redactions. If not, we may have to go a step further and maybe get some clarification as to what's redacted. Because right now, I don't know what's redacted, obviously. So if we can make that determination, without any further revelation of what's been redacted, then it'll be fine. But we're still going through it.
Okay. Did everybody hear that? Okay. Okay. Continue, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last slide is just a quick update on the schedule. They will start with utility and lift station work once they gain occupancy. If we can get everything approved in the next commission meeting or two, they're looking at maybe an April 2021 occupancy date, with the maintenance and traffic being set up 15 to 30 days afterwards. I believe that they have a notice period that once they take occupancy, they have to get notice to some of the nearby properties. So once they take occupancy, you won't see a whole lot going on, but just site prep. In relation to the Vice Mayor's comments about public outreach, the Marina Suntex has launched a website. It's still being built out, but it is in existence. They've onboarded GAR Solutions to be their public outreach firm. They've created a plan, and we'll be enacting that once everything gets approved. From the city side, we're working on creating a website, social media posts, and incorporating the maintenance of traffic and roadway right-of-way impacts into the Lauder Street website. And that concludes the presentation, unless there's any other questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions or additional comments? Okay, there being none, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mayor?
David.
Who is that, Vice Mayor? Okay.
Yes, thanks. Sorry, just one comment. There was an interesting comment made at the district pre-agenda meeting last night. Someone asked, this was good to have this kind of an update and give everyone a chance to hear the latest. And they wondered if we could do the same maybe somewhere in the near future for the Bahia Mar project. A lot of people are just wondering, it's been many years since that project. was approved, and a lot of the neighbors have not heard much. And they thought it would be nice to get some sort of an update presentation similar to what we just went through today.
Vice Mayor, I can give you somewhat of an update. We're not quite there yet with regards to, we're working on language of a renewed lease. So it's going through legal review now. We've been working at it for the last, I'd say 2 months. And we're very close, but we're not quite yet there yet, but it should be coming relatively soon.
Well, when you say renewed a new lease, what does that mean?
Well, I can't get into too many specifics, and I don't want to get into too many specifics prematurely. But obviously, the proposed development on the site will encumber the site longer than the original term. So there's going to be an extension requested with regards to the existing lease, and there's additional terms based on the type of development that's being proposed. So, but we're not there yet. We're sort of trying to legally draft a mechanism where that can take place, and then the details as to what development will be accommodated by those legal parameters then will get disseminated.
Well, is that putting the cart before the horse? I mean, has the commission really expressed an interest in wanting to change the lease?
No, but this is being brought to us, and in order for you to know what is possible and not possible on that site, because again, we have some charter limitations on that site. We obviously have a history to that site, and we want to, right now, the attorneys are working on what is feasible and not feasible on that property. And I'm not talking about specific developments necessarily, but legally what the parameters are. And then we'll have something to present to you for your consideration at that point in time. But it really isn't putting the cart before the horse, because to suggest something that wouldn't be feasible from day one would make no sense. So we have to first cover what's feasible on that site and then go from there. But we're almost there.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay.
Thank you, Alan.
Is there any further business of the commission in this conference meeting?
No, I was going to hold the COVID stuff until the manager report, but we handled it. So
right.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I guess meeting adjourned.